Hello, and welcome into Full Screen Podcast. I'm your host, Kira Aster, and I'm so happy to be with you here today on this beautiful Saturday, this beautiful October Saturday. Joining me today, as always, is my fellow lover of earnings calls and corporate town halls. It's Raven Ebert. Happy October, Raven. How are you?
Hi everybody, it's All Hands October, all spooky hands. I am pumpkin spicing, I am Ugg booting, I am crunchy leafing. I am in full Christian fall girl mode, guys.
Well,
It's
that's
amazing.
that's a straight up lie because there ain't no fall. This is summer in San Francisco.
Shit. Shit. Abort. Yes. It is absolutely like the perfect weather out here, but I don't
I
know.
wish I
It
was
can
there.
still
It's
get
chilly here.
spooky. You have the beautiful fog rolling in over the hills that you can see like every morning up
Mm.
until like honestly all through the day at this time of year. So I think that helps bring like the spooky season feeling. So it's
Oh,
good.
that's lovely. That's actually true. Yeah. This podcast is now a travel ad for San Francisco if you haven't noticed. Come visit San Francisco.
Come see the beautiful Presidio.
Okay. Yes, we're also going to talk about some other things other than travel. So let's get to that.
Yeah, the one other thing that San Francisco also sees during fourth quarter, and that is earnings calls.
Mm,
Yay!
fun stuff. Fun stuff. All right, so before we tell the folks what today's episode is about, let's quickly cover the social medias where people can reach out to us if they have any questions, any requests to cover any topics.
Yes, come bully us at Twitter and Instagram on at Full Screen Podcast. Please engage with our posts because that is how you trick teach the algorithm, excuse me, to promote our posts and honestly get into fights, call us names, we love it, spit in my mouth, look in my eye, and you can also find us on YouTube at Full Screen Podcast, where we upload our episodes so you can basically listen to us the same way that you would on a podcast, but we have a lovely visualizer. And I know YouTube is sometimes easier to get to than maybe your podcast apps, but we do have a comment section. Feel free to leave your comments there. Tweet at us and write comments on our Instagram and YouTube for future ideas, anything you'd like us to cover. Or send us an email at fullyscreened at
Old school.
gmail.com. Absolutely. If you have more feelings than the character limit on the comment section can contain, send us your email and we will delete it right away.
Ain't nobody reading emails. We're kidding. We read emails. That's wonderful. I had something. Oh yeah, the comment sections. Yes, I do want to mention we do not disable comments like Apple TV Plus, which really bothers me. I want to
Whoa.
comment. Yeah, calling them out right here. But anyway, great, wonderful. Yeah, reach out to us. We look forward to it. All right, so quickly, today's episode. So today's episode, I'm very excited about this one. So this is a sort of we're breaking away from our in-depth analyses and deep dives a little bit to call this an in-betweener, a industry tech roundup of sorts. So this likely will become a series as burning topics emerge, and we try to do emergency pods. We shall see. But for this one, we've been very compelled to talk about this. We've been talking about this, reading about this, and attending earnings calls. And today's topic is the future of HBO Max. So
We have
you've all
honestly
heard.
been very restrained because we've had feelings about this.
We've had
If you
so
follow us
many
in social
feelings.
media, you would know for sure. And we wanted to talk about this on its own without having to, I guess, conflate it with a general bigger topic.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that HBO Max as a streaming service is so in flux that I feel like we could still be covering this in more episodes. So
Oh yeah.
this is
Maybe we'll do
definitely
a
not the
part
last.
two. We'll definitely do a part two because things
I
are still
feel like it's
emerging.
coming. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
coming.
So quickly, if you are not aware, the HBO Max, our beloved HBO Max, is well going through some shit right now because of the Discovery Warner Brothers merger, Warner Media merger with Discovery. So Discovery is now the parent of all things HBO, all things Warner. And this has led to, well, a lot of things. We'll cover it. A lot of things happening, but also leaves the future of this prestige, incredible HBO Max streaming service in jeopardy. So we're gonna talk about it. We're gonna talk about the history of this merger. We're gonna talk about our speculation of what this streaming service, this future streaming service that replaces perhaps HBO Max will look like, and offer a lot of our thoughts, and feelings. So get ready. All right, let's dive in.
Mm-hmm.
All right, welcome into part one that we're calling the All Hands for this Industry Tech Roundup series. This section will cover investor days, earnings calls, town halls, announcements in Hall H at Comic-Con, all that stuff. It's all going to be in here. And you know when you hear all hands, some shit's about to go down. So
Yeah. So if you don't know what an all hands meeting is, basically, it's like this terminology that I think isn't just limited to tech, but it's a
very
meeting
common in
that
tech.
very common in tech. It's basically when the entire company, regardless of like what you do in there, has to attend a call that executives and people who are essentially decision makers are like, here are the decisions we have made for the upcoming year. Gird your loins. And this is like the first time basically on all hands is like you get to hear your company's strategy, what you're supposed to be doing, and like how those high level goals eventually trickle down to wherever you are in the Dante-esque 7-layer dip hell of corporate hierarchy. And yeah, that's basically where you're like, okay, this is what I'm supposed to actually be working on. So this is
Yeah.
gonna be pretty familiar to a lot of people in tech, but if you're not, just so you know, this is going to become a complete like bane of your existence when you do join tech, because it's
Yeah.
oftentimes you can hear about decisions that are like you didn't have any idea were coming down, which is a theme that we're going to be discussing today about
Yeah.
HBO Max.
And the scariest thing is when an all hands appears like in your on your calendar like within 2 days. Like no one wants this. It's not good. Not good. Anyway, so let's cover today's topic. Let's talk about HBO, guys. HBO Max. So we know HBO Max is owned by Warner Media, but quickly to cover what Warner Media is. So all of this dates back to the golden age of Hollywood in the early 1900s when, there were a thing called movie studios. People went to movies in theaters. Remember that
Did
time?
you know that Warner Brothers, the studio that, the Warner part comes from,
Yeah.
actually produced the first movie with sound, The Jazz
Oh
Singer,
yeah.
in
I think I did
1927.
know that. That's cool. I had forgotten that. But yeah, that's a cool tidbit. How far they've fallen.
Well, I mean, The Jazz Singer had blackface, so it's not like they came out of the gate
Oh
swinging.
lordy. Oh no. Oh no.
Yeah.
Uh, let's get this train back on track. So these five studios, MGM, owned by Amazon now, Paramount, RKO, whatever happened to RKO, Fox, and Warner Brothers. So these five rule the stratosphere, and basically, like the history of American business, kept spitting in the face of American antitrust laws and expanding as these five major studios just acquiring different companies and expanding their reach into different spheres, let's say. And the history of Warner is no different. So Warner Brothers acquired Kinsey National Company and DC Comics. These were the first very early acquisitions for Warner Brothers, and it became Warner Communications. And then very soon after, they acquired Time, Life, and HBO. Um, Time magazine, Life, and
Yeah.
HBO. So, and then they became a singular brand under the umbrella of Time Warner, which, that's cool. I didn't know this. And meanwhile, Turner, New Line Cinema, another studio, combined with Warner into a thing that we remember from the days past. It's called AOL, and AOL merged with Time Warner and became AOL Time Warner. That was a dark period that we choose to forget about. I have no idea why they acquired AOL, but everyone was cashing in on the early days of the internet, and they thought this would go somewhere, but they secretly let go of their shame of AOL and kind of spun off the acquisition. Just they were like, we're not dealing with you anymore. And then AT&T came into the picture as the owner of this whole whatever combination of Warner existed at this time. And AT&T was the big boss from 2018 to 2021. And in 2021, guess what happened? Discovery came into the picture. And Discovery, which has established itself as a very different but profitable player due to its unscripted content, which are reality shows. So a lot of reality shows that you have heard of or watch are likely on Discovery, and that's made Discovery and the streaming service very popular, very profitable. And so AT&T spun off. It's quote unquote spun off the Warner Media part of its business to Discovery, a deal that started, as mentioned, in 2021, but was finalized early this year. And that's when all the industry started freaking out. You've probably been hearing about this, you've probably been reading about this, and everything is now uncertain in terms of HBO, Warner, Discovery, all of that stuff. Now, HBO. So we know HBO Max as a service came at a time where there were a couple of services already from HBO. There was HBO Now, HBO Go. Remember those days? I was very confused about which
Yeah.
to
And
sign
it
up.
wasn't clear like what you got with what either. It was like I know
Exactly.
one of them was supposed to be a service that you kind of got for free if you subscribe to HBO through your premium cable package, and the other was a way of just getting HBO content without having to go through your cable like provider, which I guess is smart in a way. It's like, okay, you don't want to pay for 15 channels in one package, just pay a little bit and you can get, the HBO part. Honestly, at that point it was just the Game of Thrones part. Like
Mm-hmm.
that was
And I
clearly
remember this
the
very clearly that one of them would have Game of Thrones at the time it aired. Like at the same time it would release on one app but not the other. I believe on HBO Go it released at the same time but not HBO Now. And that was very confusing for some people.
yeah, but it's also like the clear, I guess, winner in a way where it's like you get to possibly pay a lower price for the other one, and
Hmm.
if it's a trade-off that you're willing to make where you just have to avoid people talking about Game of Thrones, which could be a good thing for some people. But yeah, I guess it's all now consolidated into one streaming service of just HBO Max,
One
right?
Bing, one brand, which was beautiful decision. So yes, HBO Max launched around right before the pandemic, I believe, but took off in the early days of the pandemic because of early shows that really hit with the public, like Flight Attendant. I remember was one of the early shows on HBO Max, which when you couldn't travel but you saw just like glamorous locations and like flights. There was a time that you missed taking flights, y'all, for like 4 months in 2020. um
Yeah, and it was also a time where you didn't get a lot of like brand new content because so
yes,
much production had shut down. So it was just like the
exactly.
last trickle of whatever was shot and completed and finished production in 2019
And
coming out
Tiger
in
King, don't
2020.
forget that. Yes,
Yeah. Honestly, I don't think it would have been big if it wasn't for that time where we were just so hungry for content because
I know.
we were spending more time inside and not with other people.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, content wasn't there at all. Yeah, I have not, to be honest, have not watched the season 2 of Flight Attendant, but season 1 was one of my favorites because of the time it hit. Anyway, so say HBO Max made early on, I think there was someone else in charge of HBO Max in the beginning, and then Jason Kilar came as president of Warner Media around maybe mid 2020, early 2020, and he has been very involved in the streaming space. He was involved in Hulu's early days, so he knew, in terms of, he understood the landscape, he knew content, he knew how to market content, he knew what streaming services really mean from a tech and industry perspective. And he leaned into this great moment and made a very bold, controversial, but ultimately successful decision of doing day and date releases on HBO Max. So, for example, Dune. Remember Dune? Dune!
I can't forget Dune. But yeah, it like
Oh my
every
god.
release in 2020 basically came out on HBO
The
Max on the
same
same day and
day.
date.
Yeah. Yeah, which was amazing because on the one hand, it was a great decision to actually show your customers that we care about your health and we still want you to see our content, so don't risk going to the theaters. See it at, if you feel more comfortable, see it in your home. But for creators, for a lot of directors, Christopher Nolan, a lot of people, this was not a decision that worked for them. But they stuck to it. They stuck to it. I believe until mid 2021 or early 2021, there was day and date releases going on, and this really worked for HBO Max in the beginning. At this time, it grew, really shot up with, at a time where everyone was watching streaming, right? Netflix and Disney Plus also taking off at this time. HBO Max really established itself as a major player in the streaming space, because of this strategy, because of its content, and really getting more eyeballs to its content. It grew its subscriber base. It like got all these like award nominations for its original content. Mayor of Easttown also comes to mind, and really established itself not only as like a successful streaming service, but as a prestige streaming service, which there was a time we used to label that prestige word with Netflix, but that is no longer the case. So HBO, when you think of prestige, you always think of HBO, and HBO Max has maintained that. Now, with this Discovery merger, HBO Max, a lot of, well, Warner's future is uncertain, but HBO Max, our beloved HBO Max, definitely, this is what we're here to talk about. HBO Max's future has become very uncertain, and, well, is now in jeopardy. And we're gonna dive right into that, and Raven is gonna tell us a little bit more about the content side of HBO Max.
The first thing is that HBO and HBO Max are kind of two separate things. So when people started talking about the streaming service HBO Max, yes, it contains HBO content, but HBO as a network is still run independently. So it's not like they're both sharing the same decision makers. So, for example, the decision to greenlight Mayor of Easttown had nothing to do with anybody from HBO Max. The episodes are available on HBO Max to watch it, but they don't have like the same production teams or anything around the decision making of like who gets to actually make a show for HBO, like the people who made Mayor of Easttown, or people who make shows for HBO Max, like The Flight Attendant and Hacks. So completely
Oh, great
different
show,
kind of.
Hacks.
Yeah. And Hacks has that feel of like an HBO show in a little way,
Mm-hmm.
where it's like
Mm-hmm.
a deeply personal look into
Drama, yeah.
like fucked up people who have a lot of baggage, and is a commentary maybe on the entertainment industry and how women, and particularly women in comedy, are treated. But it's like honestly a thing that I would have expected to see on HBO. So the fact that it's on HBO Max is like, okay, there's an overlap in audiences, obviously, like people who want to watch HBO shows can access it. But if you only have an HBO subscription through your cable, you don't get to see Hacks. But
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why you wouldn't want to. But anyway, so I just feel like there's been a barrage of stuff that's come through with um David Zaslav from Discovery coming in and taking over the
And
rate.
who's this Zaslav? Tell us more.
Um, some sort of hell demon spat out straight from the bowels of Beelzebub onto
That's
I
right.
don't know.
It's accurate.
I like honestly we could go into that, but from the beginning I will just say like he's very much the Discovery guy and not the Warner Brothers guy, and his background and his professional experience does not really relate to scripted television or scripted programming in general.
Is his
So
title
the
president of Discovery? What's his actual title?
he is the CEO and president of Warner Brothers Discovery.
Yeah, yeah. Big Z. Very
Yeah.
loved in Hollywood right now. It's not true. He's not.
I mean, I don't know what his like thing in the industry is, but I definitely know for sure that general people hate him. The gen
He's
pop,
emerged
the
as,
civilian
yeah,
population definitely is like has pinned this onto him because I mean more often than not, yes, these kind of decisions come from the executive level down and you absolutely can hold him accountable, but this is also a very prominent case of how there are people who don't understand the landscape sometimes that come in and um,
exactly. He's
make
a cost cutter.
decisions. Yeah, he's making decisions that aren't really based on previous work experience because he hasn't done work within this particular field. And that's
Mm-hmm.
something that we see kind of all the time in tech, where someone who's not familiar with the tech landscape comes in, makes decisions, and then wonders why things didn't go the way they did because tech as an industry has no overlap with whatever they came in as previously. So,
Yeah, you
CEO of
gotta
Pepsi
understand your
Cola.
product. You gotta do it. You gotta do the work to
Yeah,
develop an instinct about your decisions. Yeah.
CEO of Pepsi Cola can't come in and like fix, for example, Facebook. They don't have the same product, they don't have things within the same realm. And you can absolutely switch careers, but you may have to realize that that can mean starting from the bottom somewhere else. So
Or give yourself a
I
runway of like a good 6 months to a year to actually like make these bold decisions because you are not qualified.
David Zaslav's decisions have been incredibly bold. Let's start with the ones that I would say got the most media attention, which is the scrapping of several projects that were in flight and shelving them and writing them off for like insurance and tax write off purposes. I think one of the most prominent stories around this was the Batgirl production. The Batgirl movie had basically
Mm-hmm.
wrapped filming, and it was in the post production phase where the film was in the can. Like if you want to imagine it, they had like physical print of all of the action already done, and it had to go through the post production process of like the editing and the special effects and making it look like a real movie. And they came in and said, "Hey, remember we told you you're going to have a release date? Guess what? You're never getting released at all." By which I mean not only no theatrical release, but it's also not going out on HBO Max.
Now, I have
And
never heard of this app happening, by the way. Before Batgirl, I'd never heard of ever like this
okay,
kind of decision being made.
this kind of decision has been made, but not by such a huge movie studio. It's actually
Mm.
not even the first comic book movie to go through something like this. There is a 1990s version of the Fantastic Four directed by Roger Corman. It is an infamous movie because it was made with the sole purpose of retaining the rights to Fantastic Four, the comic book series. The producers had no intention of actually releasing the movie. They just had to prove that it got made so that they could retain the rights. But
Wow.
everybody on the production did not know that. So they went into this thinking that this was going to do something for their
Yeah, artists
career.
don't matter, basically.
Basically, they made this with every intention of releasing it. And so people who claim that they have watched this movie have never actually watched a fully kind of like finished movie, because there were some post-production stuff, special effects done, but ultimately it was like nobody could come in and do reshoots and stuff. It was so funny. Like, the Batgirl saga really reminded me of the whole Fantastic Four in the 1990s thing, because it was just done without telling anybody on the creative team. And I think that, unlike the Fantastic Four movie in the 90s, Batgirl was given a significant budget to actually make like a good movie for what it was. Like, it seemed like
Mm.
a small scale story, possibly. And it had, of course, expenses from maintaining COVID protocols during production
Mhm.
and
Yeah.
ensuring the health of safety of all of the people there. So it was treated like a real effort. And it kind of fit into the general direction that DC was going, where it was making smaller, quote unquote, smaller movies like Joker and this new version of Batman, where it was like scaling down, moving away from the big sort of cinematic universe type of establishing thing, and instead going for personal drama driven stories. And the Joker movie with Joaquin Phoenix had a very small budget and then produced like $1 billion at the box office. So there's clearly a precedent. And even if, Batgirl is not as well known of a character, she's still like a huge part of the DC pantheon. So she comes with an inbuilt fan base. There's a Batwoman TV show on the CW, so I feel like there's an awareness of the different Bat family characters in the younger generations that are just kind of coming into comic books and stuff. And they just yanked this production without any warning or like prior notice to the filmmakers. And it reads really bad because like the filmmakers and the lead actress are all people of color, and it sends out a very
Mm.
shitty message that they don't have faith in this particular movie because it doesn't have any like prominent actors within the established industry of reliable bankable actors, which I feel like is not a concept anymore.
It's
You
not.
don't have
I mean, they chose to not cancel the Flash. Listen, I don't support canceling any project because other than the lead actor and controversies, there's like hundreds of artists and cast and crew that work on these things and
lot of
depend on it.
livelihoods depend on this. Yeah.
Yes, so we never support canceling, but it's very interesting that this decision was made about Batgirl and not about another
Yeah.
movie.
While Ezra Miller is literally having Waco style escapades of farms and miners and guns and drugs, and they're just wreaking havoc from like state to state. Like, they're literally going from Hawaii to Vermont to like random states and saying,
Yeah.
here's where I'm gonna tussle with the local law enforcement about just like my cult like behavior. And on the other hand, then there's like the perfectly well behaved cast and crew of Batgirl that just gets this announcement on like an earnings call, which is super
Yeah.
shitty. But it kind of falls into line with how that's how layoffs are announced in tech, where an earnings call or an all hands will be like, so guess what, guys, it's all gone. And
Mm.
this comes in line
In
with like,
in in addition to Batgirl, I know that they've removed a bunch of content, like quietly. They just been removing like a lot of content from
yeah,
HBO Max.
yeah, they have. So they removed like like there's different categories of what they removed. So the one that really I would say baffled me was all of this stuff that they made through the Warner Brothers studio. Like it wasn't an HBO Max exclusive, it wasn't like an HBO Max original, even though it's only available on HBO Max. It's such a weird concept, but um if you remember the Seth Rogen movie An American Pickle, it came out like right at the beginning of the pandemic, and it seemed like one of those things that they pivoted to HBO Max because hey, theaters are shut down, let's stream this on here. They removed it. And so that means that you basically have to go find a physical copy of American Pickle if it exists, because they were having to pay all the producers and all the people who were promised stuff on the back end for these movies. So they removed American Pickle. They removed the remake of The Witches that Robert Zemeckis did. They removed this like sci-fi rom-com movie Moonshot, the comedy
Oh, they
Super
removed that.
Intelligence.
Okay.
Yes, they
I never
removed it.
watched it, but they were promoting it for a while on the homepage.
Hmm.
Uh, Interesting.
And it's just gone. They also removed some stuff from HBO. They removed the TV shows Vinyl, Mrs. Fletcher,
Oh.
Camping. They removed Run, starring Donald
Oh, they removed
Gleason.
Run. I loved Run.
Yes.
That was a good show. Yeah.
Donald
Oh, that
Gleason,
sucks.
the best
Well, when
nepotism baby.
he's so great. Best thing about the sequels, fight me.
I mean, he's the
Star
best
Wars
thing about a
sequels.
lot of stuff that he's in, and he's just not on. He made an HBO TV show, and it's not there. Then,
You know what's when you say it's all gone, what's interesting is that even creators don't know how to access things that they've made. Like other than screeners, who really has physical copies anymore really, right? Like it's become this like should I start actually
yeah,
owning things instead of like buying them on streaming channels because ultimately they can be removed.
just as people who are not necessarily opponents of streaming, but people who really love music purists are always like, buy the record, buy the album, and keep it for yourself. And not only is this a good way to promote and support the artist, but it's also a way of being able to access it should these streaming rights and streaming services for music
Yeah.
devolve into a completely different beast that it is now. And we're seeing the same thing with media content around film and television. You know, there were a lot of people who made HBO Max originals that were just on Twitter saying, guys, if you, this is the last day to watch it, like literally, you know, find a way to keep a copy of this for yourself. Like, in
Mhm.
blunt words, they were encouraging piracy, and it was just weird because streaming was supposed to solve that problem. And you have, I
Lols.
think, the antiquated laws of media distribution and the media industry in general kind of getting in the way of this. But it seems particularly cruel and heartless to people who are not within that industry, because the simple reason is that they don't have to pay residuals to all of these artists that worked on, like, a lot of animated shows from HBO Max and Cartoon Network have been removed, and the creators of those animated shows would get residuals from how much it was
Yeah.
viewed online.
Yeah.
And it seems
Mhm.
particularly focused on like removing the type of content that people born before like the polio vaccine considered to be not profitable. And I am trying to stress that as like an age thing because it really goes to show what people see as profitable versus non profitable, based on how you define what the role of television and profitability is in your company. Or I shouldn't say television, I should just say media in general, but how you engage with the viewership and what's important. It's so clear like there's stuff being removed that have very independent feels towards them. The thing of the like scrappy folks getting together and doing it and getting it done, and then those shows don't have like that corporate sheen, and then they get removed from the service. So it's very, I don't know, telling to people who are not within the industry.
What in terms of other than HBO, there's other stuff that got affected from this merger as well, right?
Yeah.
There's
um Dig into your memory hole and tell me if you remember CNN Plus, because it's a Mandela effect for me where they tell me that it was a thing and I literally do not recall what the
I
fuck
recall
CNN
it being a
was.
thing for like 2 hours.
It was genuinely like a money pit for them. They poured like millions into it, and there were even pictures of like their war rooms, which is what people call, it's like war room and tiger team are two like,
Ideation.
oh, terrible terms. Oh God, they make my skin crawl. But it
Awful.
was like
Awful.
people sitting together in front of a whiteboard and doing their best impression of like tech wizards coming up with new features and functionality for this application. And it didn't make any money. It was canceled very quickly. And that just went away. I don't think it really had anything to do with their overall strategy.
I have to say, like when we say CNN got axed, CNN Plus, imagine there's multiple teams of product teams and like stakeholders and researchers and
Marketing.
designers and
Lots of
marketers
marketing.
and a lot of people, designers and engineers, obviously building this and working under really hard timelines for who knows how long, and then it sees the light of day for an hour, 2 hours, and then it's announced that it's axed. We see this.
It would be very funny if it was literally an hour, but I think it was like a couple of days.
This is an hour. Yeah, it'd be hilarious if they were like, we've made a huge mistake, roll it back. I mean, which is what they did. But yeah, I mean, the theme emerging is just like they don't, other than like this, the content disappearing quietly, cancellations happening, they don't, and then decisions to roll back and like end entire applications, streaming applications. It
Yeah.
really casts doubt on like if they know what they're doing, you know?
Yeah, there is a sense that I'm getting that they're flailing. So I know that the other cable channels that fall within them, particularly TNT and CBS, excuse me, TBS, TNT and TBS are part of the like Discovery, like Turner Media acquisition, along with Cartoon Network. Like, shout out to the Turner Building in Atlanta. Good times, good memories.
Yeah, yeah.
They had a lot of programming canceled on those two as well. I think the one that I followed was Full Frontal with Samantha Bee on TBS. She was basically the only prominent female voice in sort of the late night comedy pantheon.
Love Sandy.
Robin Thede eventually left to create a Black Lady sketch show on HBO, which also thankfully did not get canceled. But it was a big shock because they basically don't have a competitor within that space, and that is a very lucrative space to be in, and it didn't make any real reasons why they would do that. They have a lot of like great alumni from there, and it's also just like a great place to be within comedy and late night that gets a lot of attention for being pretty incisive and on the political pulse, really, because there isn't a similar kind of voice coming in, especially with like the big network TV shows not being able to do edgy stuff. So I don't know why they canceled that. They canceled a bunch of other stuff from
Well, let's talk about why these
TBS.
cancellations are happening. I think we have not mentioned yet. Tell the folks about what their reasoning is behind these cancellations and rollbacks and all that stuff. Like, why is Zaslav doing this? What is the reason being given
I
to the
mean,
public?
I'll tell you what, it's an $825 million tax write off and a savings of over 3 billion in production costs over next year. So there's your reason,
Yeah,
folks. But
the
I
tax
truly,
write-offs.
they don't have to pay taxes because they count this as a loss, and it's like, again, just financial finagling for corporations that independent citizens or non-corporate entities and individuals cannot take advantage of. So it's another pile of bullshit over there. But they're also selling, and by they I mean Warner Brothers Discovery is selling its um primary or like majority stakeholder shake of the CW. And I really was like, why wouldn't the Discovery people like CW? I don't understand. And now they're
Fits
they're
in with
they're
their
selling it
brand.
away.
Yeah, that's
I
interesting.
have no idea what the conflict is with their brand, because they've been a majority stakeholder for the CW for like, I want to say, ever since like the whole transition of where it was the WB and then it became UPN and then finally the CW, where it went through all these shakes. I only know this because I'm a Buffy fan. Like,
Oh,
shout
Buffy
out to
forever.
people who could actually watch Buffy on the TV shows, because I did not watch Buffy as it was airing, so I was like a couple of seasons behind. And then all this drama of like, we're moving networks and we're shifting stuff, we were like, oh, what does this mean for the actual content of the show and stuff? So the CW has a very specific brand now of like bland and attractive and teen drama, and I
Now it's
think
always been the
that
case. That's why I love CW.
it's always been the case. It's always been the case. But ever since, I would say, yeah, the inception of CW, it has like a very specific brand. And um I would have thought that would appeal to Discovery. I would have thought that it appealed to Zaslav because he seems like he loves things being clearly defined. They're selling the CW, so that makes me think like, you don't want that Riverdale money? Okay.
It's I
I
don't
have
know.
no idea what you guys are doing. But
Mind-boggling.
um yeah, but it's like, as soon as you open up HBO Max now, you can see like a bunch of Discovery shit on there, but
Gross.
not all of the Discovery shit on there. So very specifically, they had the Magnolia Network, which what a like a creepy Stepford wife name.
I
Like,
literally pictured the
ooh.
face of Nicole Kidman from Stepford Wives.
Yeah, there's like that whole, they're literally trying to whitewash like fucking Southern charm and repackaging it as like something chic, and it makes my skin crawl.
Yeah.
But there is some sort of like delineation about what Discovery stuff comes onto HBO Max and what goes to Discovery Plus.
Well, in the short term, because I think in the long term, which we'll cover in the next section, we'll talk about the future combined streaming service that they're saying will
Yeah,
come in
I was
2023.
I was really happy that they had those CNN shows. I was a huge fan of Anthony Bourdain,
Mm-hmm.
so Parts Unknown used to be on HBO Max. I think it still is. But eventually, apparently, it's going to be moving to Discovery Plus, along with that genuinely fun Stanley Tucci goes around Italy and reminds people that he's
A
not just called
delight.
Stanley Tucci for fun. Yeah.
All right, welcome to part 2, which we're calling for these episodes, this series, the missed objectives and key results. And so here's where we kind of talk about, what the sort of impact on the industry, impact from a tech perspective of the decisions that have been announced, decisions that have been made, any mergers, acquisitions, all the stuff that we covered in part 1. All right, for this one, what can we expect for HBO Max as a streaming service after this merger? And here's where we will have to speculate a little bit, because not a lot is known. Not a lot.
And I think that's on
They've-
purpose. They're like
Yes.
trying to obfuscate as much as possible so that it doesn't seem like they're flailing. So it's not our fault.
They don't even know what they're gonna do, right? Like that's the vibe that we're getting. And beyond just saying that HBO Max and Discovery Plus services will be combined by summer 2023, they haven't really said much beyond that. And we'll see if the summer 2023 timeline ends up actually being something that happens. But obviously, because of this huge shockwave in the industry, there's been a lot of speculation. There's been a lot of talks about what the future could look like. And from the earnings calls here in our document here, I have this beautiful screenshot of the analysis, let's say analysis that was done by Discovery.
Metrics breakdown, I guess.
I mean, if you can even call
metrics
it that.
takeaways. Let's just simplify it. And this is really the key. They have simplified human behavior. Honestly.
Listen, this is what I put together for my high school projects. Like this is.
Oh, you're just talking about the craftsmanship of the PowerPoint? Oh, okay, shit. I thought we were going into the content.
No, not content, which is actually, how they've defined it can be interesting, but the way they've put this together should not be in a huge public earnings calls, guys. Like, this is real bad. Basically the content says HBO Max is male skewing, scripted, lean in, appointment viewing, and home of fandoms. Now Discovery Plus is female skew, unscripted, so leaning reality, lean back versus lean in content, comfort viewing versus appointment viewing, and home of genredoms, which, okay, whatever.
Okay.
But there's a lot to unpack here.
Okay. I mean, genuinely loving the 1960s gender role definition in this fucking earnings call. Like, truly incredible to equate lean in as in having more engagement and, it's more cerebral content versus lean back, where it's like, duh, turn your brain off and watch. And that's associated with women.
Females.
Love that for me. Sorry, females. Love that.
It's so bad. So this is why the content is bad as well. Like, this is like, I mean, honestly, this is what I would put together for like 30 minutes before, like, I had to present something and I knew nothing about what was happening.
Yeah,
but, bulleted lists tend to impress people. Like, look, wow, like they put logos of HBO Max and Discovery here, and there's a blue background. I really encourage everyone to look up this earnings call and look up this like slide in particular that compares the two streaming services. It's incredible. Anyway, with this, it's interesting to now look at these two streaming services, right? So HBO Max currently costs between $9.99 and $14.99, depending on if you get the ad tier or the no ad tier. Also, I believe you have bundles as well. I'm not certain of that. I pay for HBO Max without ads separately, as everyone should, if you can. And Discovery costs from, I believe, between 5 and 7, depending on ads, between $5 and $7 per month. And I believe it's one of the cheapest services, if not the cheapest, because I think Apple might be a little bit more expensive now. And this is really allowed because Discovery is not spending that much money on its content. It's unscripted, so a lot of them are reality shows. But by getting this service very, I guess, not spending a lot of money on content, but also not charging a lot of money, a lot of people have subscribed, surprisingly, to Discovery Plus, and it's become really successful, kind of keeping it lean and sort of using this strategy to keep their streaming services really going. But what does a combination of these services look like, right? Like on paper and really in and off paper, really, these two services, just like the content of these two services doesn't really make sense together. And it'll be interesting to see how they combine this into one service, or what the service is going to be called, and what they're going to do with that. Potentially, if we were to speculate, it could be something like Disney Plus, which is the owner. Disney shows all of these tiles of like all of the intellectual properties that they own: Marvel, Star Wars, I believe National Geographic is one of them. So maybe that could be a strategy which doesn't dilute the brands and the brand's identity. So maybe tiles could be DC, HBO originals and Discovery shows that could be separate, but under the umbrella of one service. And this would also really, really help with the discoverability part. And so if you're only here for one thing, you know exactly where to find it, you know exactly where to go, instead of like browsing hundreds of reality shows before you get to, I don't know, Hacks, Mayor of Easttown, some HBO show. Now, when these two services combine, it's likely that they will keep the current customers grandfathered in for a little bit. So Discovery customers pay the same rate, HBO customers pay the same rate, and can access this new app. We'll see how that works out. Although how the
Yeah.
migration from a tech perspective happens, it'll be very interesting to see. Now, talking about the tech aspect, right? Like, to be honest, as much as I love HBO Max, I've always been the biggest critic of its like UI and like tech capabilities. I find it the least, from a performance aspect, from even a visuals aspect, and from a playback
Yeah.
aspect, and search and discoverability. It's been a struggle. There's a lot of times that I try to watch a new episode of something and the player times out.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Across all
and
platforms. So if
yes.
I'm watching it on my laptop, if I'm watching it on
Oh, that's
uh
okay.
my TV, there's a lot of failure points in the tech. And some of this I actually know because um industry insider scoop. Um there is a reason why I know a lot about the kind of tech pain points that HBO Max went through, and that's because my husband used to work at the AT&T Time Warner Times.
The
And
brand.
the brand, he was part of like the kind of Rooster Teeth aspect of the Warner Brothers media side of things. They have so many acquisitions, so it was crazy, but they were going through major redo of the tech stack, of the different parts of the tech architecture that hosts like video services, subtitle services, and payments and things like that. And none of them are using the same stuff, so it's literally like not talking the same language at all these different places. So from a tech perspective, it'll be a nightmare. I don't know if they'll even do it. It may not
Yeah,
be worth it monetarily, because if there's one thing we know, a common through line of all this is saving costs, and it would cost a lot of money to do this.
exactly. And that's I mentioned the pain points of HBO Max to actually say that I had not before yesterday played with Discovery Plus app, and I expected there to be, well, I didn't know what I expected, honestly, but it's not impressive. I mean, it's not an impressive app from what the
Well, I
tech
mean,
and
it's made for
the
dumb women. I mean, sorry, lean back females.
female.
So,
Incredible. Yeah, so it's not, Discovery Plus is not performing well. Like there were a lot of like glitches in at least my Amazon uh Prime TV. And HBO Max hasn't performed well. So it'll be interesting to see what happens when they do come together. And it could be, Raven, what you were saying earlier. It could be now that they're trying out the strategy of like actually bringing content to, so maybe having like
yes.
a piece of content to Discovery, a few pieces of content to HBO Max, and maybe they're like, maybe we just live with it. But
Yeah.
it'll
I
be
feel
interesting to.
like there's a clear delineation of like expensively made versus cheaply made because, and this may sound extremely snobby, and I'm sorry, Kira, if this may step on your toes a little bit, but who gives a shit about Discovery Plus? Like,
Hey,
I
hey,
know you
the
did
lean
all this.
backed females, the leaned back females.
Oh my god. Um, but
Yeah.
no, I'm just saying, like, if I even if I can put on my like opera glasses for a little bit and get snobby, when I am watching The Sopranos or when I'm watching Hacks or watching the other incredible lean in content of HBO Max, having technical glitches takes away from that experience. So if there's a buffering issue or if something stops or I can't rewind, it's a problem on those
Hmm.
things. I don't imagine you'll lose the thread of the quote unquote plot from 90 Day Fiance if that shit breaks down.
It's true, but you're losing, I would imagine you're losing like, oh, okay, I'll just watch something else on another app, because you're not into it. Like there's, if you're engaged for Sopranos, you'll be very pissed, but you'll come back because you want to
Yeah,
finish that episode.
I suppose so, but then again, the people who are fans of the 90 Day Fiance universe are some of the most
Listen,
crazed,
yes.
obsessive, um, genuinely dangerous people because they are a dog with a bone and they won't let it go. And the level of detail that they know about complete strangers' personal lives gives me the impression that they're also not going to just drop it if streaming fails or if
It's
like
true. It's
the
true.
video fails
Perhaps
to
we don't
load.
understand. Perhaps personally we don't understand this type of
Personally, we
customer
don't.
group. But
I
yes,
can see
that's
people
how
going
it
on
is.
Twitter and saying HBO Max fix your closed captioning, HBO Max fix your rewind and fast forward button, and that's it. Where the Discovery Plus people will be like, I know where you live.
Mm-hmm.
Fix
Yeah.
your shit.
It,
I
it
know
called
where you live.
it's called
So
dedication. Listen,
yeah,
they
it's a
care.
different level. They care and they have a built-in fandom because they're so relaxed from leaning back.
Oh my god. Like folding laundry, leaning back, watching 90 Day Fiance.
You watched
Nice. That's nice.
laundry. No, you didn't watch laundry. You did laundry while watching The Gray Man. So take that.
Maybe that fits. Yeah, maybe that fits with the branding of Discovery. Hot people, terrible, terrible content.
Yeah, hot people saying dumb shit is engaging regardless of like where you're putting that content out,
Listen,
but
it works. It works. I do want to say, so talking about the com- combination of these and like the tech and infrastructure piece. HBO Max right now has a total of about 3,000 movies. Discovery Plus has under 500, around 417 combined. That is a lot of content. That is a lot of movies for one app to handle that can't get its shit together from a tech perspective. And then this is adding obviously TV shows. HBO Max has around 800 TV shows. Discovery Plus has around 2,000. This is a lot of content combining, and
Guys.
I'm getting, this is like, I'm getting anxiety from a product perspective. If I was handling this, I would, well, I would peace out. But this is alarming, and this is all speculation city. We really don't know beyond the 2023 summer timeline of this combined app, but we can expect some issues. Of course, we can expect a lot of like questionable decisions, based on like their history of questionable decisions. So it'll be interesting to see. I am intrigued to see what an app looks like where you can find selling the Hamptons side by side with Barry. Um and this is going to be very interesting. It's
You
I mean,
know,
saying that really pains me, but
no, but that question may be answered through Netflix because a lot of people don't want to watch Ma Rainey's Black Bottom and Mank and other prestige stuff that
yeah,
Netflix has done
like
that is
Blonde.
clearly. Oh, fuck off.
Yeah,
I,
no.
wow, what an incredibly. I mean, but that's a good point, though. Like, how would you want to watch Mank if there's Blonde? You're like, oh, Netflix made a movie about old Hollywood, quote unquote. Let's see if they can do it again. And Blonde is one of the most disgusting lifetime ass
Awful.
just
Don't
hateful
get me started.
movies. Like, truly, I was like, it's clear you fucking hate Marilyn Monroe. Why would you do this? But yeah, it is also the platform of where like David Fincher has made Mank, and it was pretty
Mindhunter.
incredible.
Well,
And he
that's
made Mindhunter, and Mindhunter is available on the same platform as like a lot of cheap, terrible crime documentaries that just get like white women in the suburbs paranoid about someone trying to murder them by putting fentanyl on their car doors or whatever else gets them worked up in a lather about getting more cops in the neighborhood. It absolutely dilutes that, and I think HBO.
is that the plot of Everything Is Not Okay in Oklahoma?
Oh, I mean, Um, no, it wasn't, right? It was like it was a
Some
Gone Girl situation. Spoiler.
Yeah, it was sorry, for this is from Only Murders in the Building, y'all.
Right. And I think Hulu has managed to avoid that problem because no one knows what they are as a content creator. So it's like
Right, right.
people give it a genuine shot, but they're also not churning out something to the equivalent of like 1500 Jeffrey Dahmer documentaries and then making a serious TV show about the impact that Dahmer had on victims and people in the city of Milwaukee and like ruining so many people's lives, and you
Getting
just
Evan
can't take
Peters
it.
for it.
Again, I mean, Evan Peters is gonna play a sick fuck. He just shows up. It's like, what's my role? Sick fuck. But how am I supposed to take that seriously if I can type in Jeffrey Dahmer and get his show as well as
Shoot.
10,000 other exploitative
Yes,
cheap
yes.
shit?
Well, it's very interesting because I think Netflix might be the only one doing this, well, decently, but it's interesting because Netflix's strategy of expanding so much into reality shows, unscripted content, paid off greatly in 2020 when people wanted this kind of content. But now they're obviously struggling because Netflix's prestige has gone down, a subscription base has gone down. A lot of Netflix is suffering because it doesn't know what is its identity. The marquee shows are all going. So maybe if someone at Discovery is smart, they will look at Netflix and there's a lesson learned here. But
There is
what
an entire
unlikely.
genre of entertainment on YouTube where commentary YouTubers, where their idea is to basically commentate on people and pop culture events, they get on the same algorithm of finding like the Netflix release of the week, analyzing it from a lens of media criticism, but also like social commentary criticism. and shitting all over it, and ultimately coming to the conclusion of Netflix makes garbage. This is fucking garbage. Don't watch it. But people watch it so that they can laugh at it and shit on it on social media and get that engagement. And it's like a
Yeah.
communal viewing process. And I am so scared that Zaslav would see this and say, this is a great strategy. Let's do this because we can
You
make
know, he already
cheap,
is.
terrible shit that's like, those like spate of movies starring Noah Centineo on Netflix, and then the remake that became He's All That. Cheap, terrible shit that's easy to mock at, like Tall Girl and Tall Girl 2, where you're just like, I
No,
cannot
there was a tall
believe,
girl too.
oh, she was taller and girler than ever, and this isn't the same content platform that's making like prestige shit that they're putting up for Academy
Yeah.
Awards.
Yeah.
Like, I remember where Beast of a Foreign Nation came out all those years ago and didn't get like major nominations at the Academy Awards, and we were, as a collective, saying this is bullshit. Just because it's streaming doesn't mean it should be excluded. And now, you know plenty of contenders, but it's like, oh, look, it's also on the same platform as Tall Girl too. So
It's very, yeah, it'll be
Netflix
interesting to see.
original. So that means like they paid
Oh, yeah,
for it
I
to
forgot about
happen.
that. Yeah, 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 yeah. All right, any other thoughts before we sort of move on to our final thoughts and wrap up?
Oh, I'm so worried about this David Zaslav. I
Yeah.
really am. I don't mean to sound like it's something personal against him as a human being. Like, I don't know what he's like. But I can just say that his resume is very much indicative of like being comfortable with non-scripted endeavors. Like, he has worked on all these Discovery Channel brands, and I think that he has done, I would say, a good job of being a profitable business owner. And I wouldn't say owner, I mean, I guess, a business executive, because he has made the Discovery brand money. But none of it is good in several different sense. It's not technically well made, it's not critically well
Mm-hmm.
reviewed, and it's also a poison on society, because those 48-hour investigation files and other shit that soccer moms watch vicariously to feel like they have some danger in their lives. um Red Letter Media called True Crime the Soccer Moms Fight Club. And I completely get that, because it is the way for them to like experience this stuff vicariously. But it also has an effect on how people think, it's encouraging over policing. It is encouraging
Mm,
people to get more paranoid about things, and we're not building safer communities by building trust within people. It's just like everybody is a rapist and a murderer, and I gotta be watching out for myself, and that's not a great way to live. And it's all encouraged by content that can directly be traced back, like Kevin Bacon-esque style, to like this man who has put
mm-hmm.
like, you know stuff on the Oprah Winfrey Network and Investigation Discovery Network. It's like, he's been doing all that. I really don't want the 48-hour files guy to be making the sequel to Mayor of Easttown
Oh
or
my
something,
god, that literally hurts. Yeah.
It's just that perspective. So it's like, it's very clear to me that he's like really approaching this from like a very product, like metrics driven perspective, where he says what's making money, one, how much is it costing, and what is the potential of it like gaining more viewers and gaining more people onto the app and stuff. And it's like, you're taking away from the entire core business of putting out art, of creativity. I know
Yeah.
that's not what you think your business is. It's to make money for your investors, but you are not going to be able to do that by putting out garbage.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, it makes me also worried for like come award season. This this could really have impact because HBO has long ruled, um, the award seasons. Like HBO original content nominated a lot, wins a lot, and if it moves to Discovery like that, there will likely be a very. I mean, I can't imagine a day where it's like the announcements say Hacks available on Discovery Plus. Like, ugh,
Yeah.
no.
I don't know if they will because even though there's women in it, I have leaned in watching Hacks. So
You gotta lean back.
the minute I lean back, it's like it's not for lumbar support. It is because I can just turn my brain off and just watch people moving their mouths in front of me.
Okay, final thoughts and wrap up. So, you know, we've been thinking about this for a while and talking amongst ourselves what HBO Max looks like in the future, what the content of HBO Max is, you know, streaming service looks like in the future, what this merger means, and honestly, what this means for the streaming world in general. So, a lot of it was for us that we wanted to do this episode, but also unpack, hopefully unpack this for a lot of you who've been hearing different things and maybe seeing a tweet and maybe reading an article but not really understanding the history or the impact on content and what the future might be, or what we know so far, what we don't know so far. So hopefully this provided a little bit of clarity in terms of like what is happening with this merger. And yeah, it's very HBO, we know, has established its prestige in a very short amount of time, and it'll be interesting to see what really shakes out. Yeah, Raven, any thoughts here?
HBO has its own branding of like quality. I don't think other networks have actually established something like this. I think maybe in the last couple of years we have something that says a CBS procedural drama, and that's a very negative branding for sure because it's like, oh yeah, it looks like one of those CSI and CIS bullshit. And the exact opposite of that is like this feels like an HBO drama, which I heard attached a lot to some of the early critique of House of Cards on Netflix, where they said, "Ooh, this feels like this could have gone to HBO," and that was like a good thing. That was a mark of
We don't
quality, you
mention
know.
that show's name anymore. Let's choose to forget that ever existed.
I mean, Kevin Spacey is a piece of shit, undoubtedly, but you know, like you said, this is a product of multiple people. So I am just looking at it in historical context to say that those early Netflix shows that got good reviews, like even to some extent, I would say Stranger Things also got the whole, it feels like it could have been an HBO vibe, um,
Early
because it
on,
was
for
well
sure.
made.
Yeah, very well made. It's yes, I feel like increasingly I've felt that in the industry, in the streaming, this space, a very unique space, the voices of like the product leaders and CPOs is really absent, because it feels like, yes, of course, it's a business. Cost cutting is important. Tax write offs seem attractive. But I feel like no one is really in the boardroom really talking about customers and the content and artists. And maybe they are, maybe they're shut down, but no one is saying what does this mean long term when we lose the trust of our customers, lose the clout, the prestige, the branding that we have. Like, what does that mean? Yes, maybe short term we cut costs, but long term, within 5 years, when we've lost all of our subscriptions because of these stupid decisions we're making now, no one is really.
Yeah.
I feels like people are not saying
Yeah.
this, at least not being heard, and I really just gets to me over and over again.
I am bearing the trauma of being a DC fan, and I mean a DC Comics fan. And as much as this applies to, I think, in our conversation mostly about HBO, we have to understand that these decisions also trickle down to the Warner Brothers studio projects as well as everything else that they own, for which
Yes.
my primary concern is DC Comics. I don't just mean like seeing Batman on a movie screen. I mean like, how is David Zaslav going to look at the whole business of writing and printing comic books? And is he
Mm,
going to say this is not profitable enough, this is not effective enough, this is lean in, lean back, whatever 1980s corporate jargon he's using to describe modern viewing habits and consumption habits? I don't know how that's going to be affected. He may just say we're wasting time giving money to comic book artists and writers who are creating the things that spin off into multi-million and billion-dollar franchises.
yeah.
And you know, the Joker making so much money at the box office, I don't know what percentage of that, for example, went to the Bob Kane estate or to the estates of Bill Finger, which, rest in peace, Bill Finger. He's been screwed over by this whole process so much, but how is that going to affect people who actually want to read those comics? Is it just like, we're gonna stop with that because nobody cares? So I'm afraid of that happening.
Yeah. That's oh boy, there's a lot happening here, and well, we'll see how it shakes out. Hopefully there's some good news next summer when there's some
I
sense of
mean,
the streaming service emerging, so we'll see. But
when the
yeah,
whole
it's
mess
a
of Don't Worry Darling was happening, it also just quietly came out that like Warner Brothers is only releasing like 3 more movies or a few more movies this year, and that's crazy.
yeah. Yeah. And like there's I mean, don't get me started on how they actually handled the support of their creatives and like didn't come forward with any support for the director. Awful. But
I
okay.
mean,
Yeah.
honestly, Olivia Wilde, reach out to Zack Snyder if you want to shit on Warner Brothers. You may think
A
you won't have a
director's
lot to
club.
talk about, but you may have a lot to talk about, honestly.
Honestly,
Honestly,
yeah.
you
Get
may.
Nolan in there, honestly. Like, yeah.
I mean, Nolan is secondary. Let's talk to Zack Snyder first.
Yeah, so that's it for today. Thank you to everyone for letting us talk about this, honestly, because we've been dying to talk about this. And let us know if this helped you understand. If you have more questions, we are happy to do a part 2 or part 3 required, if required. But for next time, we'll be coming to you with fun topic, very topical topic. We're gonna talk about horror. It's spooky season, y'all. So we're gonna talk about Shudder, Screambox, and the horror genre takeover on streaming. Yep.
Mmm. Spooky,
Yeah,
spooky.
exciting. All right. Until next time, full screeners. Bye.
Bye, everybody.